Gold Rush Girl. Okay, we only have a few more chapters. Chapter 42. How he did it, I don't know, but Sam maneuvered the Sadie Rose to the appropriate place where we had begun. Once there, I heaved our anchor out into the shallow water. Thad dropped the ketch sails, then hauled in the rowboat. I got into the stern seat and placed Jacob next to me, my arm tightly around him. Sam got in, finally Thad. Settled, we shoved away from the Sadie Rose, her for sale and free sign still attached. I was happy to leave her behind. Not sure we should go to the Cove Beach, said Sam. Be safer for us to head to Happy Valley. If we need to, we can hide in my tent. Nobody objected, so Thad and Sam rode side by side, pulling hard. From time to time, I'd look back. No one was coming after us. It was only as we went along that Jacob told us what had happened to him. It was the night that Thad and I returned so late from fishing down bay. Exceedingly worried as to where I might be, Jacob searched all over for us, and at one point, knowing how Thad liked to gamble, went into the crowded Mercury. That was when he was approached by a man. His description fit Mr. Castle. Castle asked Jacob what he was doing there. When Jacob told him whom he was looking for, the man offered help in finding me. He also gave Jacob some gingerbread and lemonade, which a hungry Jacob took and consumed. The lemonade must have been drugged, because the next thing Jacob knew, he was locked up on a ship. He was on one such ship and then another before being taken to the Yankee Sword. His jailer was the man with the broken nose. I never did learn his name, no more than I knew his fate. But Jacob's tale was much as Sam had told me it might have happened. While we had a successful rescue, we also knew how close we'd come to something otherwise. It kept us quiet. The boys rowed. I stayed close to Jacob. When we came ashore and stepped out on land, Happy Valley was a happy place for me. Sam led the way in the dawn light to his tent, where his father, Mr. Nichols, greeted us with a mixture of warmth and alarm as Sam related all that had happened. Mr. Nichols was simultaneously angry with Sam and proud of him, the way parents will be when their child does something foolish but brave. But after congratulations, warnings were offered. Mr. Castle will be looking for all of you. You'll need to be careful. Seeing me shivering with cold and weariness, he said, You, Miss Torrey, and Jacob need to go home. Thad, is that your name? Best you go with them. Sam, be so good as to show them the way. But, hear me? You come right back. Yes, sir. So it was that once again Sam led me, plus Jacob and Thad, through and out of Happy Valley. When we reached its edge, I found myself suddenly reluctant to part from him. I gave him a hug, as did Jacob, which he returned. He and Thad shook hands as if they were grown men. I had to smile. They were still boys to me. Can't you hug each other? I cried. Grinning sheepishly, they did. Let's meet soon, I said. That being affirmed, and knowing we were not truly parting, allowed us to go our ways. Thad, Jacob, and I worked through the city up to our tent, keeping a watch about us as we went. Exhausted by the time we got home, our steps were slow. Even as we came up to the tent by morning's light, Senor Rosales spied us coming and ran to meet us. Corderita, Jacob, welcome home. Tell me what has happened. We told him the tale as much as we could. You'll need to find a place to hide. That man with the broken nose, if he survived, he knows where you live. When was the last time you ate? When I told him, he said, I'll bring you some food. Then I'll keep a lookout from my cafe. You may be sure I thanked him profusely. Thad stood there awkwardly. I better be going, he said. Jacob, all his dislike gone, gave him an embrace, then, as if embarrassed, ran into the tent. Thank you, I said to Thad, and impulsively gave him another hug, which he returned awkwardly. We did some fine good, he called as he headed up the hill. By the time I got into the tent, Jacob was already on his bed with his blanket up to his chin, happy to be home. Within moments, Senor Rosales brought us beefsteaks and coffee. Jacob and I devoured it all. Torrey, said Jacob when we were finally alone, I didn't know if I would ever see you again. Same, I returned. Then I added, I hope you heard what Sam's father said. We're going to have to be careful. We're going to have to keep looking about. Do we have to hide somewhere? I can't believe that man survived. He was terribly drunk, and he's the only one who knows where we lived. For a moment, we just lay on our beds, appreciating the silent calm. Tori, what? Do you think Mother and Father will be coming soon? This time he said it reluctantly, as if afraid of the answer. It's December, I said. They should be here soon. Father promised. Mother, I don't know. Any day, hopefully. Within moments, I heard Jacob's soft, breathy sleep. For a while, I lay there, running through all that had happened. In doing so, I renewed my gratitude for what Thad and Sam had done. How could I ever return such favors, particularly to Sam? I also allowed myself to feel pride for what I'd accomplished, how much I had changed since the Providence days. That led to Jacob's question coming into my head. Where are Mother and Father? What if they don't come? I quickly scolded myself. They will come. But then, how could it be otherwise? Another question came. When they do come, what will they say and do about all that I have become? Chapter 43. Morning came and Jacob slept later than I. As I lay abed, waiting for him to wake, my hunger was such that I went across the way, where Senor Rosales was already at work feeding a line of men. Cordorita, he called when he saw me. ¿Cómo estás? Sleep well? I'll be fine, I assured him. He beckoned me close, then leaned forward and whispered, You need to know, the whole morning the talk here is about the burning of the Yankee sword. I said nothing, nada. The rumor is one man died. I'll go to the mayor's office. I should tell them what happened. Do you wish I go with you? Gracias, but I think it's best if I go alone. Well, with Jacob. Then he offered me some beef. I wondered if he ever got tired of cooking it. Once Jacob got up and ate some food, the two of us went to Portsmouth Square, where the office of the Alcadati, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, what the city mayor's office was called, was open. Happily, the only one who was there was Mr. John Geary, the mayor himself. I had seen him about town, for he was hard to miss. A huge man, he was more than 6 feet tall and quite heavy and always well dressed. He seemed puzzled by my showing up with Jacob, and he asked in a friendly fashion what I wished. Please, sir, I need to tell you what happened to the Yankee sword. Can you? He returned, clearly surprised, but immediately interested. I told him our story, with me doing most of the talking, though Jacob added his tale of how he had been crimped. Mr. Geary listened to us and spoke little, growing graver and graver as we went on. When we were done, he said, You've been very brave. He did not reveal what he would do, if anything, but he did say, I think the two of you may consider yourselves safe. As I would later learn, there were no arrests, but before 2 days had passed, Thad discovered that Chief Fallon had resigned his position and had gone to live far across the bay. Captain Littlefield vanished, presumably sailing away on another ship. As for Mr. Castle, the Alta California newspaper reported that he had removed to Sacramento to build himself a new saloon there. Finally, a few days later, when about town, I saw the man with the broken nose. When I spied him, I was taken aback, having assumed that he had perished. That said, his hands were bandaged, and he had bruises on his face. Captain Littlefield must have pulled him from the water. As for me, dressed as I was at the moment in my feminine attire, he did not recognize me. Then again, acting like a lady is the best disguise. Even so, I was much alarmed and felt fear that he was back in the city. Might he not seek revenge upon me? Then I realized that he had a sea chest on his shoulder and he was going downhill. Feeling the need to see where he was heading, so I could avoid the area, I followed him at a careful distance. To my great relief, he went down to the cove, and I watched as he climbed into a lighter and was carried out to a ship that I knew voyaged to the Sandwich Islands. I never saw him board the vessel. I even saw him board the vessel, thus gaining the satisfaction and relief of knowing he was going far away. Indeed, I never saw him again. So much for my enemies. When Jacob and I left the mayor's office, my brother asked if we could go to the post office and see if there was any mail for Mother or Father. Once there, we stood in a long line for perhaps an hour, during which time I reminded Jacob that he must not be disappointed if there was no letter for us. But to our amazement, there was a letter, one addressed to Mr. Randolph Blaisdell. That moment it was handed to us, I recognized it was my mother's handwriting. We had taken no more than 2 steps away from the building when I tore the letter open. "What does it say?" cried Jacob, fairly well dancing about me. I spoke even as I scanned the letter. "She wrote it months ago, but she says she's planning to leave Rhode Island in 3 weeks' time by the clipper ship." "But when will she arrive?" I tried to calculate. "If all goes well," I tried, sounding optimistic, "very soon." As we walked back to the tent, Jacob was excited. "Then Father will come. I know he will. And then we'll all be together again." He babbled on about all the things he would tell them, resolving to stand watch every day at the Cove Beach for their arrival so he could lead them straight to our tent. Was I glad? Of course. But I could not refrain from asking the question that I had asked myself the night before. What will Mother say and do about all that I have become? So that too, I kept thinking, I hope they will come soon. But a tiny voice, my shame and guilt, whispered, what will I do if they insist that I return to what I was? During the next few days, Jacob and my life resumed what it had been. I worked helping Mr. Lyle with his carpentry on the house he was building. Jacob, as he had promised, spent his time at the Cove Beach, watching for Mother and Father as ships came in. He made sure to come by often to where I was working to assure me he was safe. I saw Thad, who resumed his work at Howard and Mellis' store. In turn, he told me Sam had come around to tell him that he and his father were now playing at the El Dorado Saloon. Is it good for them? Don't think it pays much. With much back and forth among us, we agreed to meet the following Sunday at noon on Goat Hill. So it was that the 3 of us, Thad, Sam, and I, sat upon the summit of Goat Hill. Jacob stayed with Senor Gonzalez. I brought along one of Senor's beefsteaks and my knife. Thad brought bread. Sam brought a good jug of water and his bugle. It was a bright, clear day. As we ate, we gazed at Alcatraz Island while watching new ships arriving in the cove. I told them that my mother might well be on one of them. Maybe the same ship as my mother and my sister, said Thad. Sam told us about his mother and 2 sisters, about whom we had never heard about before. They'll be waiting for us to come back. It's been a year now. I admitted I wanted both my parents to arrive, but I was much worried as to what they would say about how I was living. What might they do? Asked Sam. Not sure, I said. Back in Providence, I wouldn't have ever been allowed to be here with you. Ay-ya, said Thad. Think your father will have a lot of gold? Asked Sam. Doubt it. Who's playing at the El Dorado? What's playing at the El Dorado like? Bigger than the Mercury, but they don't listen any better there. Do you make any money? Thad asked. Nope. But my father says if we can keep saving some, just a little at a time, we might have enough money to pay passage home in about a year. How much do you need? 500. If I make that at the tables, Thad promised as he had before, you can have it. But you rarely win, said Sam, laughing. In truth, most of our talk was to go over all that had happened with us when we rescued Jacob, from where I met Sam at the Mercury to stepping ashore at Happy Valley. It was clear we truly regretted that our adventure was over, and we wished we did not have to return to our lives as they were. In fact, we debated about sailing away on the ketch, disputing amongst ourselves with laughing arguments as to where we might best sail. New York, said Sam. Over to the gold diggings, urged Thad, while I suggested the most exotic, China. At some point, Sam picked up his key bugle and played I Often Think of Writing Home. I will admit I shed some tears. The boys did not tease me, and why should they? Their eyes were also bright. Late afternoon, we headed back down, then each of us to our own ways. Sam to the El Dorado, Thad to his Howard and Mellis job, me to my tent. When I approached, I saw Jacob sitting outside. Soon as I appeared, he jumped up and ran toward me. He was grinning broadly. "Guess who's here?" "Who?" I asked. "Mother!" It was indeed. She, having landed that afternoon, a 5 months' voyage by way of a clipper ship. Jacob, to his vast delight, had seen her come ashore and with great excitement had guided her to our tent. Her astonishment and incomprehension as to what she saw of San Francisco was hardly different from our own when we had arrived. As for our residing in a tent, that seemed beyond all understanding. She seemed, in fact, quite dazed. We struggled to answer her endless questions, and it was a measure as to how much Jacob and I had changed that we could actually offer so many explanations, suggesting it was all ordinary. When we had first come to San Francisco, it was as if we had come to a foreign land. Now it was Mother who felt like a foreigner and had to be instructed in how we lived. It was as if we had become her parents. But of course, Mother's biggest question, "Where is Father?" had no answer. Why did he leave you? How could he ask you to live here? Has he sent no news? Has he found gold? What do you do for money? What do you eat? Tori, why are you dressed so outlandishly? Where are your ladylike clothes? But what kind of work do you do? Jacob, why aren't you going to school? As far as I was concerned, these were all Providence questions. We gave San Francisco answers. And when we told Mother about all that had happened to Jacob and how he was rescued, she was nothing less than astonished. I shall say this, it is a fine thing to have your mother look upon you with amazement and, yes, with pride. As the days passed, Mother struggled to cope, and I had to deal with one constant question. Tori, must you do things this way? That said, she could not argue with the obvious. I was taking care of everything. And let it be said that she was not Aunt Lavinia. She did not order or dictate. Still, she constantly urged with the refrain, "You'll really need to change when Father returns with his gold." I tried to explain when Father returned he might, like so many others, not have so much gold. But Mother simply could not believe that possibility. As for Senor Rosales and Mother, after some hesitation, became friends. Anyone who had helped her children had to be a friend. Besides, Jacob and I now called him Tio Rosales, which is to say, Uncle Rosales. A vast improvement on our aunt. He had become our family. 2 weeks passed. During that time, I continued to work, and when I could, I sneaked away to visit with Thad and Sam. Each of us, in our own way, was dissatisfied with what we were doing. Thad was bored with his job. Sam was all too aware how long it would be before he and his father could go back east. And as for Mother and I, it was a tug of war. I could only hope that when Father returned, his gold searching would have changed him. Then Father did return. This is the last chapter, so I'll keep reading. It was the week before Christmas. Mother, Jacob, and I were sitting in the tent eating the dinner I had cooked. Utterly unexpected, Father simply pulled aside the front flap, and there he was. Needless to say, we were astonished, as we were overjoyed, though he was filthy, sick, and exhausted. We truly dragged him inside, set him down, and peppered him with questions. The tale he told was woeful. His search for gold had been painful and most melancholy. Back-breaking labor, cold, wet, difficulties with other miners. Overall, he had found no more than $300 worth of gold. None of this mattered at first. We made him eat, rest, and I insisted that he not worry. Mother and I assured him that I, with my work, was bringing in enough funds to keep us going. Having little choice, we stayed where we were, in the tent. Father rested and gradually recovered his strength. Our Christmas was us and Tio Rosales, which is to say, our whole family. Only some time had passed Only after some time had passed did I tell Father what happened to us, to Jacob. He shook his head and said, I am so sorry. To which I said, you need not be. I was able to do everything. To my great satisfaction, he said, you did. Afterward, Mother and I had many a private conversation, trying to decide what our family should do. We considered many things, from returning to Rhode Island to all of us going up bay to the diggings and searching for gold. We could come to no satisfactory conclusion. In any case, I absolutely refused to go back east. After a month had gone by, it was clear that Father, now mostly recovered, had absolutely no desire to return to the diggings. His gold fever had been broken. He decided to seek employment in the city. We managed to purchase, at an exorbitant price, new clothing for him, and we made sure he was clean and shaved. The result, although he was thinner, he was much improved in health and appearance. It worked. To his and our great joy, he found employment with Mr. Thomas Wells, the city's most important banker. How quickly then our lives changed. A house, to be sure, smaller and less comfortable than our Providence home, was found, and it was built by Mr. Lyell and me. Mother took it over and made it as comfortable as possible. The Baptist school opened, and Jacob began to go to school, and he was much happier, indeed, content. I had never seen my family, Jacob, Father, and Mother, so happy. It was almost exactly what Father had wished for in Providence. The only thing that will change is our geography. And I knew now that Aunt Lavinia was part of our past. But what of me? I had changed. I had become completely independent. At least I thought so. My parents did not. Jacob didn't care what I did with my days, but my parents surely did. While they were content to reclaim their lives much as they lived them before in Rhode Island, they wished me to do the same. I would not. My parents were not pleased that I kept on working, and that when I worked, I dressed in such fashion that allowed me to labor. Nor did they like it that after I had taken care of them and Jacob, I came and went as I pleased, or that Sam and Thad continued to be my friends. The three of us met as often as we could. To be sure, we still talked about Jacob's rescue, but over time, less and less. Rather, we talked about what we would like to do. Sam, as ever, wanted to return to his home. Thad began to say he wanted to try his hand in the gold fields. I said I wished to live without constant remarks about how I should act. It was Thad who put all these ideas together and made the suggestion. I think we should go to the diggings and get as much gold as we can so Sam and his father can get back home. Think we could? Sam asked. Yeah. And how do you suppose we could even get to the gold fields? I asked. The catch, Thad said. For a moment, no one said anything. Then I said, is she still out there? I saw her 2 days ago. Truly? Thad grinned. God on her. She's just as we left her. I looked to Sam. I don't know. Sure, my dad would love the money to go, but he wouldn't love me heading out there to get it. The two of us had a bad time before, but he turned to me. You in for it? I don't think my parents would like it either. Which means, said Thad, I have to think about it. I did not speak the entire truth. I knew exactly what I wished to do. The question was, how was I to tell my parents? Later, I sat my parents down. Jacob was not there. And I began by saying, without my friend Sam, Jacob would not be with us. I related yet again how Sam was the one who told me what had happened to Jacob. I also made sure they understood all he had done to help save him, even losing his job. Then I went on to relate his story, how he and his father had come seeking gold, only to be driven away from the diggings. Finally, I told them what happened to Sam's brother. I said, I need to find a way to thank him, and the best way is to find enough gold so that he can get back to New York State. Then I added, I am not asking permission to go. I just wanted you to know where I am going with my two best friends. That is to say, I gave them no choice. So it was that 1 week later, Thad, Sam, and I were on the catch, sailing eastward into the bay, heading for the gold fields. We had our pans, our shovels, our food. And of course, we changed our little boat's name. She was no longer called the Sadie Rose. The name, which I had crudely painted on her stern, was Our Destiny. And that's the end. Wasn't that so good? And then there's a little bit at the end that talks about Rotten Row, and it shows like all the different boats. And I posted some stuff about Rotten Row, some videos that are incredible. So it was a great story. I'm super curious as to whether or not he might write a sequel, because I mean, he could easily have these three end up in the diggings and tell their story about what happened, whether they find gold or not. So I hope so. I love Avi and I love his books. And then if you loved this one, look for other books by him. I've been telling you guys on Zoom that True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle is super good. And Beyond the Western Sea is so good. And that one has book 1 and book 2. So he's a great writer. Okay, guys, signing off for now. No more Gold Rush Girl. Great story.